Thank you very much for joining us for a special segment on Beyond the Headlines, where we try to sit down with different students from different universities and try to find common grounds amongst our different religions. Today we're at Georgetown University and I'm delighted to be with an amazing panel. Let me start by introducing my guest. On my right here is Katya Stefan, who is a Christian. And with her is Asra Ashfaq, who is a Muslim. And on my immediate left here is Bhavna Bharwani, who is a Hindu. And we have David Denker, who is Jewish. Let me start off with you, Katya. When we talk about commonality in faith and finding common grounds amongst different religions, what is that one factor that you see unanimous in all religions? Is it the one faith and belief in the existence of one God, or is it something else?
Well, I think it comes down to belief in God, whether it's one God or multiple gods or God in different forms, whatever it may be. I think that really is the most basic tie, just belief in God's existence.
What would you say, Asra, to that?
I would add that in terms of Islam and Christianity, you can't be a Muslim if you don't believe in Jesus. For Christians, they believe in Jesus to be God, and for Muslims, they believe in Jesus to be the prophet. So if you look into religions deep enough, you can find common grounds in what one religion believes and what another believes, so you can have similar ties.
What about you, Bhavna? What's your take on this?
In terms of commonalities, I think that one thing that's very common across all religions is a belief in a higher being, whether you call it God, or just a light, anything that you call it, whatever it is, it's something higher. And I think part of that is the search for deeper meaning in life. And I think something very important about all religions is that they all strive to kind of imbibe good values in daily living. I think all religions cross all borders. Whatever the teachings are, the main point is to insert those teachings into your daily lives.
What's your comment on that?
I agree. I think the most important part of religion, and that what we find that's very easy to find commonality, is that part of bringing God to us and connecting with God is having the moral values and the moral code. And I know in Judaism and Christianity and Islam, I don't really know so much about Hinduism, unfortunately, but we stress a very important we stress the importance of law and truly behaving with what we believe that God exists. And I think we all recognize the importance of connecting with God to enhance life, which is I think the ultimate goal.
A lot of the people, have the same question, that people don't know a lot about Hinduism. But if we look back in time, for example, in the subcontinent in South Asia, we have seen in the past that for 700 years, or maybe more than that, Hindus, Jews, and Muslims have lived together in harmony, even including Christians, specifically in that part of the world. And then you can take it to Spain and Cordova, where we have an amazing example. If we were doing it then what happened? What happened now? I mean, why can't we do it today?
That's a good question. Why can't we do it today?
What do you think?
All over the world, or just... Because I think if you look at India today, we're still doing it in India today. I think people are still living very harmoniously. You've got Jews, Christians, Muslims, Jains, Sikhs, Baha'i, Mormons, everything. Everyone's still living very harmoniously in India. And I think it's part of the culture. If you look at India, a lot of it is, India is based a lot on Hindu culture. Hinduism is a predominant religion. And I think it speaks a lot about Hinduism's willingness to accept other faiths and religions. Only not because we have anything specific to our faith, just because the way our faith is that we, like you said earlier on, we believe in one God, but He comes in many forms. And so for us, anything that you call God, whether it's Allah or Jesus or Jewish or any, I don't know much, or God for Judaism, it's like different paths to us. It's not different religions. It's just a different way of reaching the higher goal. And I think having that kind of background as a Hindu helps us kind of accept different religions, and it helps people in India live together with different people. If your neighbors are Muslims or Jews or Christians, you know, for you as a Hindu, it's just another path to reaching a higher state of living, and living more harmoniously with people around you.
David, you've been to Jerusalem, and you know we've seen that in Jerusalem, Arabs, Muslims, and Jews, they work together in hospitals and labs and stuff like that. Why is there so much hatred between the Muslims and the Jews? If we have this living example that they're living together in harmony, then why do we have this hatred?
It's a very difficult question, first of all, and a very serious one. But I think that a lot of it has to do with a lack of understanding about our own faith, and a lack of especially interpersonal understanding about another person's faith. I think the minute you recognize the problems that you have with your own faith and the questions you have, and you address them, then you become stronger in who you are. And I think it's really important that you don't feel threatened if someone else is seems more knowledgeable about their religion, about their faith. I think that's crucial. But also, the ultimate key is to know someone else as a human being. I think Judaism stresses the importance of life and the importance of respecting life and caring for God's creations. And I think the only way we can do that is if we really see the other person as God's creation. And when people work together, you create that harmony. You talk, you learn, you joke. That's the only way to get beyond hatred, and it's existed in the past. I think unfortunately we've come to a point where we stress things that are not people. We stress money, we stress fame and power, and I think if we really refocus our efforts on people and caring, then we can move beyond that hatred.
Asra, if you talk about Jews, Muslims, and Christians, Jews, Muslims, and Christians in particular, just for a second, and if we try to analyze that, we will realize that everyone's coming from the Jews. And it's like our ancestors would somehow be connected to them. If we are connected to the Jews, and the Jews are connected to the Christians, and Christians are connected to the Muslims, then why is there so much hatred amongst the Muslims, some Muslims, against the Jews? What is your take on that?
Again, I would say that's a very difficult question, and I myself I'm not able to come up with an answer. But I have many Jewish friends, and when we discuss issues like these, it's kind of hard to talk about it in a manner that won't offend the other person or their background and their religion. And I don't understand why how Jews are connected to the Christians and Christians are connected to Muslims, but yet there are more similarities between Islam and Judaism. And I was talking to a friend yesterday. Actually, it was really interesting. I was talking to him and I'm like, he's Jewish, and how come there's so many similarities between Muslims and Jews and there's so much hatred? Like, if you can sit down and all the Orthodox rules are the same as the conservative rules in Islam, and it mind boggles me to understand, like, why is this happening? And I think that it's just, again, the lack of understanding your own religion, or not making an effort to really understand what each and everything means, because you can interpret it. It's just the religion is being interpreted in different ways by different people. So radicals and moderates and liberals, they all interpret it in their own way. So unfortunately, we see the radical side more than the moderate side. So I think that would be something to help the situation or alleviate the situation would be to see more moderate Muslims speak out or have their voices heard, so they can bridge the gap between the differences and say, no, this is what Islam says, or this is what Judaism says, and show that there's so many similarities and we can coexist peacefully.
That's an amazing point. So what you're trying to say is the fact that when we hear radicals from Islam talk about their point of view, the moderate Muslims should also rise to the challenge and give their perspective, give their take on it, rather than just being quiet.
Yes, and it's an attack against Islam. It's an attack against my religion, our religion and to sit, and I'm not very knowledgeable on the subject, so I don't know how many voices there are standing up against, like moderate voices there are standing up against the radicals, but you just don't see many in the media. So,
And especially from the Middle East.
yes, and if as an average college student, if I can sit and talk to someone and give them facts and figures and be like, no, this is being done, that's being done, I would feel like I achieved something in terms of defending my religion. And if I'm just sitting there and I have no support, it could be consequence of my own like lack of knowledge. But again, if it's not in the media, if I'm not able to see it on a day-to-day basis or like easily, then I'll have a hard time defending, no, Islam is a peaceful religion. How do I defend that if there are not many examples of moderate Muslims or Muslims in general? I wouldn't call moderate or conservative Muslims any different. Muslim is a Muslim. If I don't see the right or the accurate depiction of Islam, then it's hard to convey to others that no, Islam is a peaceful religion. But
Katya, maybe you can help us out in this. We have seen, if you look at the past, we've seen fundamentalism or radicalism in all the religions, be it Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam. But what would be your take as far as Christianity is concerned? We know that there were crusaders, and they went out, and whatever that happened, everyone knows about it. But then there was this renaissance within Christianity, I guess, if I'm putting it right. And now we see majority of the Christians talking about peace, talking about human rights, stopping human rights abuses, leading the international community as far as reconciliation is concerned. Where did that change come into being in Christianity?
I think it's hard to say.
Or how do you think it happened?
I think it might have something to do with the Enlightenment, which led to the idea that everyone has equal rights, and that really didn't focus on religion whatsoever. In fact, some members of the Enlightenment were very much against religion, and I think viewed it as superstitious. So I think the idea that dividing people based on religion and having a negative attitude towards someone based on their religion probably began to be contended and to be opposed at that time in Europe. It's interesting that you mentioned the Crusades, because before, when you said that in the past people of different religions got along so well, the first thing I thought of was the Crusades and how that really wasn't the situation at that time. I think one thing that we need to mention about the Crusades is that the movement fell apart, I think mostly because people realized that they were not even being fought for religious reasons. Most of the people that participated in the Crusades, as far as I know, killed people of their own religion while they were killing people of other religions. And they did all types of things during their journey to the Holy Land that are forbidden by their religions. So it really wasn't about religion in the case of the Crusades, although for some people I'm sure it was. So I'm not really sure how to explain the Crusades in that sense.
Do you think it was for political reasons?
It was definitely a struggle within Christianity, because I do know that Catholic Christians killed Eastern Christians or Orthodox Christians in Constantinople on their way to the Holy Land. So I know that that was part of it. And I know that there was a struggle between the Byzantine Church and the Roman Catholic Church at this time for control of the Holy Land. So that would explain that as well. So I guess you could say that it was mostly political, but religious in the sense that there was the struggle between the two Christian churches at that time.
Who won?
Well, as far as I know,
They both became friends.
All of the Holy Lands, as far as I know, the Christian sites in the Holy Lands, from what I hear, are under the control of the Orthodox Church. So in that sense, I guess, Eastern Church won, but I don't think anyone really won. I think it was just it was just a mess, and nothing really came about as a result except for greater division.
I think it's not so much, when we talk about religious and ethnic conflict, I don't think that those conflicts are actually based in their origin on religion and on ethnicity. I think, I took an amazing class here at Georgetown last semester on comparative ethnic and religious conflict, and the point that was really driven home for us, I think, in that class was that these struggles are not based at all on, you know, the clash of the civilizations or the clash of religion or faith or ethnicity. They're based on simple economic struggle over basic necessities. But people aren't going to rally behind a class struggle. People aren't going to mobilize behind a class struggle. So what happens is that people get mobilized and start to rally behind a religious cause, because that's what people are passionate about. So that's what people can be, that's what leaders and whoever wants to mobilize the masses can use to rally people up. And that's how these conflicts become religious and ethnic conflicts. But in the base, at the origin, it's definitely not a religious or ethnic conflict. But all of that has been completely overshadowed in recent years, and we don't see that anymore. And so we're just living at the superficial level of religious and ethnic conflict, when actually it wasn't about that to begin with.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. If we look at the past, Gandhi is an amazing example that how he, without any violence, how he was able to push the British out. In fact, kick them out of the subcontinent, and they never came back. And the fact that when we talk about suicide bombing, for example, if you look at what happened to Rajiv Gandhi, how the Tamil Tigers assassinated him, and there we saw one of the first examples of how suicide bombers work. Had nothing to do with Islam, but we saw that thing happening over there. But besides that, if Gandhi can do it, and if Martin Luther King can pick that up and bring a tremendous revolution within America, what do you think is the lesson there that people are ignoring?
I think the message is still there, but people are too caught up with different things right now. You know, it's underlying, you know, we still have the same beliefs in nonviolence. You know, ahimsa, nonviolence, is one of the pillars of Hinduism. The belief is still there, but people are not going to rally behind it. I mean, for a Gandhi or for a Martin Luther King to emerge in any society, there's got to be a whole history of little movements that kind of bring these people out. It's only when society wants something to happen as a whole that something actually happens, that a movement actually happens. Right now, I think people are just content with being where they are. Like you were saying, the moderates, we're not speaking out as moderates. It's the moderates that need to speak out. And we can do our part, but I think the media also has to do their part, because moderates don't sell on the media.
I think one of the things that people don't talk enough about Gandhi and Martin Luther King is how deeply religious they were. They spent many formative years examining themselves, and especially Gandhi, you know, completely transformed his life around how he saw himself and with the power of self-repair. And I think it's not so much, I think when you talk about moderates, I think it's a lot of people who just don't know and are just not aware of what their core is. And I think if those values can really come out more, to really have more of a reflective attitude in the world, I think that we can have more Martin Luther King and Gandhi-esque leaders and people that will emulate those values. It's just too easy to bandwagon with someone who says, okay, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about because he uses the catchwords in different religions. But someone who really thinks about life and people and how people think, they're the ones that are making real change. We don't value that enough, and especially in the Western world, I think, and I think a lot of the world, and that's unfortunate.
Oh, I liked how Bhavna put it, that the media doesn't really promote the moderates as much, even if there are there. Just recently, and I was just doing a Google search, and I came across CARE, which is the Council of American Islamic Relations, and the founder, or the president, or his name is Ahmad Dijar, I believe, and he, who I would call a moderate Muslim, is making efforts, and he responded with the CARE organization to Pope Benedict's statement, the whole controversy with that, and they raised, they had held a fundraiser and rose $5,000 to give to the churches to repair the churches that some of the radical Muslims destroyed or damaged, and that's an amazing effort on CARE's part, which I didn't hear about in the media or in the news or afterwards, like whenever this whole issue was going on. And it's something that it doesn't just come up when you go on BBC or CNN or something like that. It's something that if someone's looking for the answer, they can find it, because it is out there. It's just people who are willing to make an effort or who are not willing to make an effort. I just happened to do it. I wouldn't have known either. So.
Exactly, because media is sensationalist.
But media says that people don't approach them. There aren't enough people who would approach, and
it's a two-way street. We have to do our part. Media has to do their part as well. I mean, everyone has to do their part. And if everyone just sits back and says, no one's approaching me, you know, I mean, we do have to do our part, and you do have to do your part. So this is a good start.
Fantastic. But I'd like to come back to you, Asra, with reference to what Katia was saying a while back, which is very amazing. She talked about enlightenment within Christianity. I don't know if I should say that religions need to be enlightened. I think people or the followers of the religion, be it any religion, need to be enlightened. Do you think Muslims need a renaissance, or they need some kind of an enlightenment, or they're okay, it's just a little segment of that which are creating some kind of a problem? Because killing anyone, all religions forbid killing innocent people, innocent civilians, people who have nothing to do with any political conflict. How do you differentiate between that?
In terms of conflict within the religion, Islam, like currently, and it has been going on for a while, the conflict between Sunnis and Shias, what is that all about? I mean, they're all, Sunnis are Muslims and Shias are Muslims. That's something that definitely needs an enlightenment. Muslims need to understand that, who are we fighting? Is there a cause? What are we trying to reach at? You're a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. If we can't get along, we can't live together, we can't appreciate the differences, or they might be minor, they might be huge, I don't know, but I'm a Muslim. I'm a Sunni, but whenever someone asks me, I don't say I'm a Sunni Muslim, I'm Muslim. And I think that's how it should be, and it's really sad that a lot of Muslims don't feel that way. Even amongst my family, I see that Sunnis, I mean, they say, no, Sunnis are Muslims and Shias have differences, and I consider myself Muslim. I was raised as a Muslim. I was never told, Sunni, Shia, you're a Sunni, you have to do this, these are the differences. But I think if we realize that, you know, it comes down to us being Muslims, then we can get past this conflict within Islam. So I think we first need to start within Islam and then go outside and create peace with the other religions. So
That's what, coming back to your point, David, that's what you were saying, that I think we need to understand our religions first and then talk about others. But I've never heard of Jews fighting Jews.
All the time. I mean, everyone knows the famous joke of 2 Jews and 3 opinions, and it really, I mean, it's very true, because we pride ourselves in kind of winning arguments. It's a whole part of our tradition, our historical tradition of law, and of finding different ways to view things. But yeah, there are very painful struggles within Judaism, and I'd like to stress not so much American Judaism, because I feel that's something of a newer phenomenon, but ancient. I think if you look at modern day Israel, you see the similar clashes between, I'd say, the Jews of descent from Eastern Europe and Europe, and Jews from Muslim countries, North Africa and Mesopotamia, and they call them Eastern. But where people, you see these same struggles, like they're almost very racist struggles, that these people are less than, are not real, they don't belong here, they're not entitled to this. You know, they have different. You see, there's 2 different strands of tradition and law, and there's always just been, when they come together, you struggle for who really is the correct one. And I think you see that also in the United States, where there's different blends of secularism and different blends of religiosity that affect, who is legitimate, spokesman for the Jew. And yeah, it can be a very painful struggle. And I also say that a lot of the conflict that Jews have with other non-religions, we need to focus on, as I said, realizing who we are, what message do we want to promote as a people, before we can really be ultimately successful with others.
What is it about America that makes it possible for us to sit down like this and talk? And we see immense diversity. And because of that, we see this immense outburst of creativity in America. What is it that makes that happen?
I think it's two things. I think, first of all, it's the freedom of religion and the detachment between religion and the state. Not that saying no one's religious, but that we've always had religious freedom, and that's allowed people to immigrate to the United States and to mix. So we learn to coexist, on the street and with shopping and other kinds of things, and eventually that will blossom. That blossoms into these kinds of dialogues. We're sitting at a Catholic university, but and we're
and there's
from all
no Catholic
different,
here.
well, that, and we're all from different religious backgrounds, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about America, and I think it needs to, and now that we're taking advantage of it, is very important. But because we have the immigrants and they're able to come together from different backgrounds, and that religion isn't institutionalized, is crucial.
Asra, do you think that people have difficulties in differentiating between the people of America and the government of America?
I would agree with that statement, because the majority of people who are not from America, I would say I can only relate to the Pakistanis that I know back in Pakistan. They tend to, not all of them, but a lot of them, tend to put them together, the people and the government. And whatever the government might be doing, they think that the people have the same opinion, or, they forget that, people, I tell them on my own experiences that I have never faced anything. I've never done this. I mean, I've never come across any prejudice, or especially after 9/11, or anything that would make me feel uncomfortable. And that is not what they believe, or they think, I shouldn't say believe. They're under the impression that it's, ever since 9/11, it's a struggle to live in the U.S., and it's a problem, and every little thing needs to be watched and careful attention. You can't do this, can't do that. But I wouldn't say that. I've been living here, and my family has been living here, and no problems whatsoever. I mean, I'm sure other people they do have experiences, but if you have an open mind, you shouldn't fear anything or you shouldn't attach something without any research on your part in terms of what the people believe and what the government is doing, or your experiences with the people. You live with them, they're your neighbors, they're your friends. How can they suddenly change their opinion? So that needs to be realized, yeah.
It's very easy to dehumanize, and especially in terms of governments and different people and states, that we forget. It's really easy to say, Musharraf is saying this, that means all of Pakistan is going to believe this, or Bush says this, it's all of America. America is a huge, diverse place. The same with India, and same with Pakistan, and all these different places. There's many things going on, and it's the same idea. We need to realize the complexities that go on in life, and not. I think the problem is they call it the soundbite culture, that we just want to make everything simple. Let's make a quick decision and move on, and that's the same issue.
And it's also laziness too. A lot of we can sit here and say, oh, this is not being done, that's not being done. But someone with more knowledge would say, no, I can tell you, this is going on. How do you not know that? I mean, if we make the effort, it's an effort on both parts, the media and the people. They both have to come together. It's not just one person. So you can say, I can sit here and say, no, I don't know what's going on, or I don't see it, so it may not be happening. Or if Bush says something, it's the whole of America. No, it's definitely not.
It's coming back to the same point that you mentioned a while back, that do you think people in the Muslim world somehow fail to see the that Israel is doing. For example, I've never seen people talk about how many Muslim doctors work in the hospitals in Jerusalem. I don't see stories on that, or I don't see how handicapped kids, Muslim kids, are being nurtured in the hospitals of Israel. I'm sure conflicts would have their own basis, but we cannot always ignore the good that's being done. Do you think that the good is being ignored because of this radicalization of the whole idea?
Yes, I think that when you have a goal, and the way to support that goal is to make the other person evil, and that supports your goal, then they're going to continue to do that. There's no, I think, among the elements that want the radical elements that they want to incite that hatred, it's very easy to compartmentalize what you see and what you don't see, or what you focus on, what you think. And you see that everywhere, every conflict, every discussion, every group, in all levels of international domestic society. I think also it's the same issue. We don't think of the country, we don't think of the people inside the country, we don't think of what really goes on the ground. And because I think in a lot of ways also it's unfortunate that it's really almost difficult to do that unless you go and visit. Yeah. And that's the same thing with many conflicts and many disagreements.
Katya, I'd like to come back to you. It's a very diverse panel, and the best part about you guys is that all of you have been to other places in the world. Throughout history, all religions have contributed towards the development of sciences, linguistics, other dynamics. You see Muslims have contributed to geometry and so forth. Christians have contributed to literature. Do you think that would kind of help people understand how all religions together have worked and contributed towards humanity, rather than just being one finger in your hand? If you put all of them together, it becomes a punch, and there's a benefit of working as a punch rather than just working as one little tiny finger. Do you think people can learn something from that?
I think they can, but the problem is that most of the contributions, the really important contributions that different religions have made to other cultures occurred a long time ago. Even if people know that, for instance, Arabic people contributed geometry, well, that's something that happened a long time ago, and every time you do a geometry problem, you probably don't think in your head, oh, well, I'm doing this because it was created by these people. Mm-hmm. I think it's very easy to forget about things like that, and I think that's natural. And I'm not saying that different religions aren't contributing things to other religions and other cultures right now, but I think the main contributions were made a very long time ago. So I think that in order to be cognizant of those contributions, you have to have a good education, and you have to keep things like that in mind. You have to be taught to keep things like that in mind. So I think the only way to really change that would be to focus on those contributions in our school systems more than we do at this point.
Bhavna, what would you say to that? I mean, Gandhi did that long time back, but Martin Luther did it again, and then other people are picking it up from him, and who knows what happens next. So do you think people have forgotten about that?
I think the majority of people have probably forgotten about that, and it's unfortunate. I mean, right now, I think we have Black History Month going on in at least at Georgetown, and there was an event the other day saying, why is Black History Month still important? And it is still important, but the fact that we have to have an event saying, why is Black History Month still important, shows that we've all forgotten about that. We've forgotten about Black history, we've forgotten about Gandhi. And I think right now the most important contribution that religion can make is exactly what both of you were saying. We ourselves, as practicing members of our faith, have to deepen our understanding of our religion. Because as we deepen our understanding, it's only then that we'll be able to live better lives. And if we're living better lives, we'll be living more harmonious lives.
What would you say to that? I mean, do you think that the Muslims of today are too much stuck with the past and haven't really progressed? Because some Muslims say that they don't need progression because progression means changing the words of God. So what would you say to that? Do you think it's a better idea to see how Islam was in the 5th century, 6th century? And because I know the Salafis think like this, which is the Osama bin Laden group. They believe that everyone should go back to that era and live a life according to those principles, whereas we see in Christianity and in Judaism and in Hinduism that they've been progressing. But does that mean changing the Word of God, or does that mean understanding it in a different light?
I would say it's understanding it in a different light because, again, there are different interpretations. Different people interpret the text differently. So if you're talking about the Osama bin Laden group and that sort of group, they're interpreting it the way they want to see it, the way they want to portray Islam to be. I mean, they can support it, but it's just their own interpretation. That I think needs to be changed because to go on with the world and to live with other different religions and to promote your own religion, there needs to be a balance in terms of what you follow. And I don't think that there needs to be anything changed. Like progression doesn't mean that you have to change what you're doing. Progression just means, progression can take on many different meanings. It could mean that you're living with other people. It's progressing, but you still can follow your own religion. Like in Georgetown, we all follow our own faiths. We have our own events, but we attend different events. We attend different organizations. We co-sponsor things. That's progressing. That's working together. So that's a form of progression that we need to do. We need to work together instead of forgetting our own religion. That's not an answer to moving forward. So,
David, a very interesting point that she highlighted. I've got two questions for you. First is, a lot of the people in the Muslim world think that Jews have this agenda against Islam. They are out to take over the world and destroy Islam and all that. I think Judaism has been existing longer than any other religion, or comparatively as old as other religions. They haven't done that till now. So what is going on? Do you feel, because she talked about misconceptions about each other's faiths, do you think there is this misunderstanding going on? Because I know that if you look at just last year, it was the first time that Hanukkah, Eid, and Christmas were celebrated together. And I know a lot of people in LA, some friends of mine got together, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and celebrated these three occasions together. And a lot of the Muslims, I don't think, have any idea that we did that.
I think a few things. First of all, I mean, the idea that Jews run the world is obviously ridiculous. We are about 13 million people. It's less than half of 1% of the world's population, and it's unfortunately, I'm not an expert in anti-Semitism, but it came from old Eastern Europe, like the old blood libel saying Jews use Christian children's blood for matzah and Passover and protocols of the elders of Zion, which was complete fabrications. And I don't think the Jews could have survived for 3,000 years if we were trying to control everyone else. I think we would have been wiped out. All the attempts to wipe out the Jews would have been more successful. Jews don't proselytize. We don't believe in that. We believe that we are a light to the nations, but we were supposed to be a positive light, not supposed to be an element, an agent of change of God's will. But we're not supposed to. Not everyone. Other people don't have to be Jewish. In our tradition, there have always been other people around. We're just supposed to be a model, and live peacefully.
Yeah, the fact that we celebrated Christmas, Hanukkah, and Eid the same day the past year. And a lot of people in America, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, celebrated together. And I think that shows that there isn't any hidden agendas against destroying each other's religion or killing each other's entire race. But this idea exists in some of the Muslims. They think that Jews are out to destroy everyone else. So
I agree. I mean, I think when you have people coming together and seeing what the rituals are about, then it fosters more understanding. But just what we've been touching on also, just interacting and living with each other. The people that think the Jews are out to run the world don't interact with Jews. And that's crucial in what you said. I mean, so you have to, but also when you come together, you have to, as we went before, you have to understand your religion. You have to understand what Hanukkah is about. Why is Eid important in Christmas? You know, what does that mean to you? And to share that, which is when you really see that there is no agenda, if you really understand why it's important.
Katya, you want to add something?
I just wanted to make a comment about the celebration of all these 3 holidays. It just even sounds beautiful when you like listen to it, that they were all celebrated together. But you know, people, it just sounds like something that should be promoted more and should you know, get out there and be like, this is happening, it can happen, it should continue to happen. And it's beautiful, it just sounds amazing, so.
Well, I think that it would have been nice to hear something on the news about what you mentioned. Even if it was just a small gathering, it would have been nice to at least see a small article or, you know, a few seconds on a news show, because I think news like that is very encouraging. But I think the media tends to focus on negative interaction amongst religions as opposed to positive interaction of this kind.
So does that mean media in America is biased?
No, I think they're trying to make money.
Sensationalize everything that sells.
Yeah, I don't know if necessarily. I mean, sensationalism happens all the time, but yeah, they focus on something that people are going to turn on to. And I think it's not so much a problem of the media as a problem of what we value as a society. Do we really value, you know, watching other people kill each other? It's a tough question.
Cowboys and Indians. People have always loved that.
Yeah. Why?
Bhavna, do you think it has something to do with the entire human race rising to the challenge, changing their perceptions about each other, growing up?
We're at this very important point right now where you've got generations in the past. I feel like at Georgetown, we're very fortunate to have these opportunities to kind of be with each other and mix with each other. And there's such a different community and different culture here where we seek to understand each other. I think that's more what is needed in the world. So it is a challenge for the whole of human race, society right now, to rise to kind of, I guess we have to reprioritize what we value. And I think we're seeing that we're seeing the negative effects of what we've been doing, not only in terms of how the media is sensationalizing things and how that's affecting us, but in terms of what we're doing to the environment. If you just look at that in itself, you know, things are slowly starting to turn around. I don't know if you watch the Oscars. Inconvenient Truth won loads of awards on many different fronts, and I think that speaks very strongly about what's happening. People are starting to change the consciousness that they have about what they need to be doing with the world. So slow baby steps are being made, which is good, but there are definitely ways that those steps can be, like that process can be sped up.
Do you think India picked up on that, and that's why they're in this dynamic global progression right now?
Picked up on what exactly?
On the essence of understanding that you got to do better things in life than to just bicker and stab each other in the back and talk about you know, differences in religion and all that, and just concentrate on education, on livelihood, on developing skill sets.
People in India and around the world are probably waking up to many different things. I wish I could pinpoint what it was so that we could spread it.
Have you been to India?
Yeah, I go back as often as I can. I go back at least every other summer.
Do you see any fights amongst religions in India?
In my personal experience, when I've been there, not really. Just in my personal experience.
What would you say on what happened in Gujarat?
When?
A couple of years back.
I mean, you're going to have things that erupt all over the place, you know, whether it's in India, different parts of India. I mean, you have so many different faiths and religions in India. There's bound to be some sort of a conflict. And it's unfortunate that does happen, but it doesn't, I mean, from what I read on the news, it doesn't happen all too often, which is a good sign.
Katya, how can we seek harmony? I mean, the world is getting crazier and crazier every day when you talk about getting together as far as religions are concerned. Is there any way that can help us understand ourselves and understand each other better, and then work on developing our own selves rather than just, bickering and blaming that who's wrong and who's right, or just running this race that I am the best religion in the world and everyone else should be following me?
I think it's a very difficult question, but I think that this definitely ties back into what David mentioned before about learning more about your own religion before you decide what other religions are like. So I think that's where you start. Make sure that you know what exactly your religion believes, and then I think research other religions. And I know that not everyone has the means to do that, or the time to do that, or maybe even the will to do that, but I think that if you've got the will, then you're going to find some way of doing it, whether it's by talking to people of different religions, or going to a library, going to services of different religions, or anything like that. So I think once you can see both sides, your own side and the other side, or all of the other sides, because there's so many other sides, then I think you can actually compare and contrast, see the similarities, and accept the differences.
To go on that, Islam does stress to research other religions. It does stress that it is your obligation to understand why Islam is what many Muslims believe that Islam is the religion. Like, why is it, it's not supposed to be that, should be followed blindly. And I'm sure it's stressed in other religions as well, that you're supposed to find out, what the other religions are about, like why they're different, what makes them different, why do you follow what you follow, and not just blindly follow what you're, you were born into a certain religion, and that's who you are, and you continue to follow that. It's an obligation in Islam to get out, to find out, to read about other religions. So,
reverting back to David's point, do you think it's because a lot of the hatred specifically amongst Muslims and Jews is because Muslims don't know the Jews, and vice versa?
I think that has a big part to play. A lot of Muslims and Jews, I think they're not making a big effort. It may be happening in smaller ways and amongst smaller groups, but whole blown out effort to get to know each other, to see that we have so many similarities. Let's sit down. Let's talk about the similarities and focus on them first, and accept the differences. You don't have to agree on everything. That's not possible, and I don't think you should aim on agreeing on everything. But accept, we're gonna have differences, and we can learn to live with that.
Just like parents and kids, right? Mom and dads have differences, kids have differences with mom and dad, but they all live together as one family. My last question, if you just talk about the dynamics within Pakistan, for example, just as an example, I want to use that. 51% of the population is below 16. I think about this every day. 10 to 15 years down the road, what's going to happen to those kids? And the kids in other parts of the world who will be joining them down the road. My question is, what kind of legacy do you think we're leaving behind for them to look up to? I mean, I look at American legacies in the past, and I feel really proud that America is America because of its forefathers. And India, for example, because of what Gandhi did and the forefathers did in India. If we can somehow look into the future and try to understand what kind of legacies will we leave behind for the future generations to come, and look back at us and say that, what the hell did these guys do? How can we address that? How can we successfully leave positive legacies for the future generation? What would you comment on that?
That's another very, very difficult question.
I like to ask difficult questions.
I've noticed. I think the main thing you can do is just to set an example in your own life, or through your own life rather, because you know that at least is going to impact your relatives and your friends. And that might be a relatively small group, but if they take after you, then maybe their relatives and their friends will take after them. And in that sense, it will spread to a big group of people. So I think that if in your own life you demonstrate tolerance towards people of other faiths and you reach out to people of other faiths in the sense that you have friends of other faiths and you talk about different religious topics with them, and if you show that you know enough about your own religion to make certain comparisons and to contrast other aspects, then I think that that will inspire those immediately around you. And if nothing else, it'll just leave them with the memory. They might not copy your example exactly, but they will remember, oh, well, that person did this, and at least that will remain in them in that way, even if they don't copy it directly.
That's a great way to go about it. And to add to that, using Pakistan as an example, where education level is very low, that would be the start, I think. Promote education, get that to a level where it needs to be. Why is it so low? If you target those, making schools better, having better universities, and promoting education at every level, that's to start. Like so many villages, many children don't even have access to go schools, and I think to target such a heavy question as what legacies, what can we leave behind for them to follow? Well, if we can give them education so they can learn themselves, that would be a great way to show that we made an effort in terms of educating them or the future generations. So.
When do you plan to go back to Pakistan?
I don't know yet, but one day, yes, inshallah.
David?
Yeah, I agree also that it has to be it has to lead a personal example is the most effective way. But I also wanted to add to that, I think we need to open up our borders more as opposed to closing them. I think in the in the 1980s and stuff, there are many people are coming to the United States to study, to go to universities. And unfortunately, we've stopped that in a very large way. And we need to promote that. We need to go abroad. People need to come here. We need to keep traveling and try to meet as many different people as you can. And hopefully, when you're little, you'll be instilled with that value to just get to know people, to meet people, to not be afraid. And I don't say not be afraid, but to really value diversity.
Beautiful.
I completely agree with everything all three of you just said. The only thing I would add to that is that right now, I think we're a very high-tech society. Our focus is very much on technology. I think we need to shift our focus and become a high-touch society. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of the best thing that we can do for tomorrow is to live today well.
I am just stunned by all these beautiful answers. I wish that somehow your answers would literally and truly touch people, and then we can eventually become a high-touch society. That's a new word, by the way. You've just said a new genre, high-touch society, man. Beautiful. I'd like to thank you all, an amazing panel. I'd like to thank Katya Stefan and Asra Shwak, David Denker, and Bhavna Parvani. Thank you all so very much for joining us and being a part of this amazing discussion. I feel touched already. I don't know about you guys. I hope that somehow we were all able to touch each other, and I wish that our audience could also get the message and be touched. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.